Hey guys, so I'm going to go over what I did on Saturday, November 27th, 2021. So my family's still all here at this point. Everyone was going to leave on the Sunday, actually. So still spent most of this day visiting with family. We went for another hike at the nice wooded trail that I'd mentioned, the place where we go mountain biking. Took a little bit of a different path this time, but still had really nice weather, really beautiful weather, which was nice for our Thanksgiving break here. And this is, like I said, this is actually typical of my family. We like to visit with each other when we go on walks and hikes and stuff. So really nice. We did this in the morning, I think 11 o'clock, maybe 10 o'clock. I don't quite remember. Um, but I did finish what I'd started the day before here, talking about that open discussion forum. It was pretty rigorous in it, probably 4 pages or so, where I documented the idea. I kind of explained how I've been a sysadmin for this other community that's set up around the Bible teaching of ichthus.com, which is that Bible study site that I follow, and kind of discussing how that community works and what I've learned in that process and what the idea would be here and maybe how it could be a platform for some of the other people I know who might have kind of communities of their own, which would benefit from having this kind of private localized community on the internet and what people thought of that. I actually took a nap today too. I hadn't because I'd had other stuff all these other days, but decided, you know what, I'm on vacation here, so I am going to sleep and enjoy my sleep. And so I did take a nap on the Saturday here. Now, after I got up, I had done this write-up, but then I wanted to share it with my friends. And so at various points, I've used different kind of different workflows. For a while, I was actually writing things in a text editor called Emacs. It's specifically something in Emacs called org mode, which has this export functionality that was actually really nice. I was exporting to PDF with something called zLaTeX. So LaTeX is how you typeset documents, very common in like scientific and mathematical writing and stuff. Like if you want to have a formula that has like an integral in it, for example, very common to typeset that in LaTeX. So I had been previously exporting my documents written in org mode to PDFs using zLaTeX. There's a plugin, or not a plugin. I had to set this up in the configuration file for my Emacs profile. But I've kind of moved away from Emacs. I do most of my writing and stuff now in Visual Studio Code. And in fact, I switched to Markdown, directly writing stuff in Markdown rather than having a conversion between org mode and building my website via static site generator with org mode. Well, I decided to move everything to Markdown. It's a little bit more portable. More people know Markdown than org mode. Other advantages like this as well. But anyway, now that I'm doing Markdown, I have used a program called Typora before to export. You can export to PDF there. But I wanted specifically to do stuff in VS Code. That's kind of where I live now. That's where I do a lot of programming at work. We use Angular on our front end project on my team at work. So I spend a lot of my time doing TypeScript stuff in VS Code at work. And so I'm comfortable with it and all the hotkeys and some of the plugins I use and things like that. So I decided, you know what, I want to set up my kind of document generation here in VS Code. And so I wanted plugins for a couple things. First off, I wanted to be able to make a table of contents that I could link things to, link to the headers in a document. And then I also wanted to be able to export that table of contents. So when I export the functionality to a PDF, I wanted to export from Markdown to PDF, and I wanted that table of contents to end up in the export. And then the third thing, which I kind of decided that I needed partway through here, was the table of contents plugin that I ended up using. It makes these things here, these tags like a name equals, and then it concatenates the header title. So headers in Markdown are things like this, with the number signs. So this right here in HTML gets converted to an H1 header. If you have 2 number signs, that's like a secondary header. 3 is a H3. You get the idea. But this is kind of what ended up getting put on all the lines with the headers. It's kind of ugly. So it got added to every header in the Markdown file when the table of contents gets generated. And so these things here, these tags, they kind of add clutter and look ugly during editing. And so the idea I had was just to run the table of contents generation command. So in Visual Studio Code, you can press Control-Shift-P, and that opens up the command palette. And then you can kind of fuzzy search on the commands that you want to run. And so I kind of just type in table of contents and press enter because it is kind of smart and prioritizes the commands like in terms of the bottom to top in terms of like frequency. So the commands you use most frequently will show up at the top of the list. So I can basically type in TOC and press enter after I press Control-Shift-P, and that runs the script to generate the table of contents in the Markdown file. And then right after that, Again, I can press Control Shift P, press PDF, and then press Enter. That will generate the PDF here. Exporting the Markdown file to PDF is pretty quick. Maybe 5 seconds or something. And then after that, I can run a regular expression to get rid of these egg curves. So these ugly things that get added to all the headers there during the generation of the table of contents and dynamically hyperlinking to all the sections. You kind of need this actually to do that. But when I'm text editing and otherwise going through the content, I don't really need it there at that point. I only need it there right before I export. So I found a plugin. It's a really cool plugin actually for VS Code that lets you basically save regular expressions as commands that you can run. So regular expressions, very powerful tools for finding and replacing, but having to type them out each and every time you want to do something, what's kind of time consuming. And so what this plugin lets you do is it kind of lets you make named rules that is a regular expression or set of regular expressions that you can run in the order that you can run them in. So I made a regular expression rule, and I think I called it like remove table of contents links or something. So that again, I'd press Control Shift P, open up the command palette in VS Code, and then, or I think I can actually run this one. I press Alt R, I believe. I press Alt R for like regular expression rule, and then I type in the name of the rule and press Enter, and then it just gets rid of all of these and keeps my Markdown file nice and clean looking when I'm actually doing the editing. So I had to do a bunch of, not a bunch, but maybe an hour and a half of research to figure out how to get all the plugins set up. So like again, 3 plugins here: the table of contents plugin, the export to PDF plugin, and then the regular expression rule plugin to let me easily clean up by a saved regular expression here, the tags that get generated from the table of contents. So I did all my research there. And after I had figured all this out, well, then I exported the writing that I'd done, discussing this idea of the more open forum community that I've already discussed here. Well, I exported that using this workflow here. So after I exported it, I shared it with the people who I was going to see in about a day here at the reunion, just to see what they thought about it and if they thought it was a good idea. We talked about it a little bit in the group chat. Do we want to do a forum? People were interested actually in a Discord. I'll talk about that in a couple more days here. But that's mostly what I did today, kind of process stuff, figuring out how to kind of export from Markdown and Visual Studio Code to a nicely formatted PDF, and all of the plugins that kind of go into that. This is just my setup. I'm sure there's other ways to do this, but I was pretty happy with how things turned out. Being able to access all of this through the command palette is really nice too. It makes it really, really quick, keyboard-driven way to run all of this. So once you do it a couple times, you get that muscle memory. It's really fast. Looks cool too, of course, but so that's what I did here. Lots of stuff, organizing, tweaking VS Code after going for a hike and spending time with my family more in the morning there. So that was Saturday, November 27th here, and I will go over Sunday the 28th in just a second.